Welcome to the Lighthouse Experiment, a Freedom Center Church podcast.
Do the thing.
Awesome. Well, welcome back to the Lighthouse Experiment Podcast. Thank you all for joining us again this week. This week we're, again, just Jim Parkin, myself, Ashley Chandler, and we have guest Chris Patrello on with us again. So thank you so much for joining us back. We're really excited to have you again this week.
I'm excited to be back. I was welcomed. It was a welcomed invite, Jim. Thank you for reaching out.
Absolutely.
Well, and the fun part was that the last episode I got to hear the conversation after you had the conversation, you know, as I'm editing and everything. So I missed you, but I didn't miss you. So I'm excited to join you both this time.
Yeah, it's nice to officially meet you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been how long? It's been, what, about a year since you were on? Something like that?
Sounds about right. I'd have to go back and look, but that sounds about right.
I only remember because I know I was sick in around March. So I was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
we dated by our illnesses. That must mean we're at a certain age, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Sure.
so I guess we can jump right in. You know what I mean? I got no sense in lingering. So, school shooting in Texas yesterday. You know, obviously a terrible tragedy. I always, just because of my position in life, I always look at, you know, kind of my worldview is always from that of a first responder first. You know, I always am thinking about that angle and kind of timelines and all of these things. And then, you know, when you get into all the debates, I start getting frustrated because I'm like, wait a minute, this scene's not even over. And we're arguing already about, like, you know?
Yeah.
And so just the effects, I have never in my career been involved in such a thing. I was not yet EMT or anything when the Clara Barton boiler exploded. Were you working at that time, Chris? Were you on the road yet?
It's interesting you bring that up. We were just talking about that at lunch maybe 2 days ago. And yes, I was working in EMS. I had the day off. I had worked the day before. So I missed the event, but Ron Green was on the call, and so he was talking some firsthand experiences of some stuff that he dealt with during the call, and there were some similarities too. I don't know how to make this lateral, but there at the Clara Barton explosion, MTA buses were brought in and patients were moved to a church.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knew that it happened. Nobody knew that patients were moved. And so everybody had to respond down to this church and do this triage all down there. And so similar to what happened yesterday, patients were moved from the school out to these hospitals, and parents had no idea where their kids were.
Right.
You know, and there were people waiting until today before they learned of the fate of their kids.
Right.
I didn't know that.
So the unknown, and so I don't know how you again make that ladder to EMS. But that's a similar situation where the unknowns.
Right.
During an event like this.
Right. Well, I mean, we're going to a little circle around here. Ashley, are you familiar with Clara Barton and that explosion?
No, I'm not.
So it was a nursing home, and what year was that, Chris?
We figured it out. It was 99.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nursing home, and the boiler, if I'm not mistaken, blew up. It was a huge explosion. So then all these nursing home residents are displaced. You know, my mom was working, my dad was at Holly Convalescent at the time. And so she was working there. So when he had to be in a nursing home full time, what she did to be close is took a job at the nursing home and became an administrator. But she was telling me how, you know, they moved all these patients to that church. They got triaged. They obviously couldn't go back to their spot. Right. So the nursing homes all over the county, people were just showing up with like no information, like barely patient names, no, like what meds do they need to be on? What's their, like, they need to be in Alzheimer's lockdown? they like all the stuff.
Wow.
So it was just wild.
Yeah. But I can totally see how in that moment, though, the first priority is to assess the patient, like take care of the patient. Like, we'll figure out who they are later, but we got to make sure we get,
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Same life,
yeah. So what's interesting is we have all these mandatory trainings and stuff like that we did back in the day.
Okay.
I only know this because I had forgotten about them for almost 2 decades. And then I changed agencies and they're like, we need your NIMS training. We need all these certifications. And
Okay.
I'm like, oh, I don't remember even that, like ever doing it. But what that is kind of gets us familiar with incident command and the breakdown. When you have a big scenario like yesterday, there's this whole command structure that like basically nationwide, that's how everybody understands it. Everybody knows that your place, your lane, and I would imagine it went fairly well. Throughout my career, I've seen it go well on like fire scenes and stuff like that. But when you mix in the emotion, the humanity of this is elementary school kids, so all these folks are doing the thing, but at the same time, and I these are probably things we'll never know, or maybe down the line we will, but maybe like if that happens in Grand Blanc at my kid's school and I'm working, then, I don't know the rules of MMR quite yet on how that goes. Like, do they pull me off the road? Am I working? Sure. Am I going to be active? You know what I mean? There's all these nuances that happen, and it's wild to me over the course of the past 24 hours is that like I'm viewing this whole thing through those lenses, through, then of course through chaplain lens and all these other things. And as leadership, what would I do? What would I expect from our people? How do you rotate them out and all these things, and then also watching the world, knuckles up over whether we should all have automatic weapons or not.
Well, they did in Genesee County last week, or it was maybe 2 weeks ago, they did a mass casualty training out of the airport. Yeah. So it's probably, I've never participated in one. I don't know if you have, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
There is a layer of people that exist that know how to handle a casualty situation on the operational side. And then, but you do bring up a good point. It's like, what about the emotional side? And then we are, for separate as the companies are nowadays versus back in my day from working on the road, we're still, I do believe the brotherhood still exists. And you bring it up, how would MMR handle it? I'm pretty confident that they would take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
This happened, and I think that every company would step up and run the MMR call so that Jim's truck could go down if this were something you had to deal with.
Right.
So I do believe, I still have faith that exists in the EMS community for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. Mm-hmm. It's interesting too, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but I've only been over there for I worked last week, and today was my first day back, and already a couple of younger medics have come to me and they said, what was it like, as if I'm Moses. what was
You're getting the beard now though, Jim.
What was it like back in when you were coming up, and how do we get back to that?
Yeah.
This one young medic, she said, how do we get to a place where instead of just making fun of banks EMS, we help them be better? Sure. Like, how do we, instead of just ripping on each other all the time, why is it so competitive? Why can't we be, and I was like, there's nothing saying we can't be. We just have kind of morphed into this culture where everything is competing for the next corner to post at.
I don't know what the answer is to that. If I did, I'd be a millionaire. But it's definitely different from our era, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And I kind of have some milestones of what I think happened. I think that the computers Computers ruined us.
They did.
And so Ashley, so you're aware, in my day when I used to, have to walk to work in sandals, uphill both ways in the snow, we used to have to write paper reports. So pen and paper reports. And if there were multiple ambulance companies at a hospital at the same time, we were all sitting in a room together writing reports. And that was the time where the camaraderie was really built, was in that room. And it didn't matter what uniform you were wearing. We just all sat around and drank a cup of coffee and wrote our reports. And then computers got put into the ambulances and we had to write our reports on the computers. Well, you can do that outside of the hospital. So the culture shifted to leave the hospital, get back in service and be prepared for your next call.
Right.
And you can write your report while you're waiting.
Right.
So that opportunity to sit down with one another went away. And so I believe that that's where we stopped getting to know each other socially.
Right.
And then, I think that the vie for the nursing homes to get those contracts, once the contracts became up for bid, I think that was a big turning point, and everybody's competing for the same business. And then, and then we have a couple of large companies that are, it's face value. They come in and they're trying to take over everything. And okay, that's the business model. I get it. Do your thing, but then that creates this competitive culture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely.
pretty amazing to have that singular task of writing, or like it puts everybody at the same baseline, right?
Sure.
Like it really is that common ground of task of we're really at the end of the day doing the same mission together, That's pretty.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. I would say that's spot on, man. That is truly the breakdown of how all of this shifted.
Yeah. And then when you do that, when you can get back into service before you get your report done, now that gains the extra call. So the person that gets out in service the quickest can get the call, the one more call than the other truck, the other agency. Right. And so that might have spurred some of the competition too, that whoever can get out and back on the road first or fastest. And I believe, the agencies understand that and they know it. So if they can clear faster, get out back on the road faster, then we're going to get that extra call, and then we just
now, I still think, Jim, you and Danny all the time would be like, the great and powerful Alpha 198, and you turned it into a positive challenge, being able to spin that
be as good as
challenge into, hey, let's get some good action going here as far as like kind of sharpening each other. I think that there's great power in words too. It can be really easy to just kind of throw criticism at other people. And I think to be people that are willing to kind of hold back and not just kind of join in on that is simple. Like I heard somebody today say, oh yeah, I'm standing in a store and the shop lady's talking to a customer, and they're talking about lady number A or whatever, letter A, and talking about, oh yeah, she has no common sense, like none whatsoever. And it's like, so this other person that's not there, you're drawing a flat, she has absolutely no common sense. So it was really maybe kind of small, but even some of those just micro things, how we speak about people can be pretty tremendous. And then that kind of compounds and builds, what we're willing to say about other people, how we're willing to kind of slander and judge other people instead of being able to call people up, call people into,
and it's strange because in our little, first responder culture, like there's especially like in Genesee County in the EMS community, there's people who have developed terrible reputations. And so, and then so agencies will happen and they'll be involved, and it's everybody already knows. Everybody already knows. They know what's going to happen. They know kind of the timeline of how it goes down. So there's, you know what I mean by that? So there's people that you could hold back on, but it doesn't matter if I hold back on saying anything because everybody already knew. You know what I mean? It's just, it's for as large as the county is a very small.
Yeah.
Still kind of, I wouldn't say would you call us antiquated as far as the EMS system?
No, I don't think so at all. people think so because of how diverse it is. The fact that there's so many companies and the fact that we service 3 hospitals, that's a pretty uncommon occurrence. I guess let me backtrack. The fact that we have so many private companies, there's areas that have multiple fire departments and run municipal services. But the fact that we do have so many private companies and we service 3 hospitals that are very capable hospitals, it makes us very unique. And if you compare what Genesee County does in regards to their protocols, there are some things that we require from our providers that nobody else does. We're one of the only ones that are really strict on these certifications, like the trauma certification and the pediatric certification. Not too many counties do that. So we require the 12 lead training. The 12 lead training was something that nobody else does that, or at least I don't know that I know of. And so I don't think we're antiquated at all. I just think we're unique and different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only thing I ever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything else. I mean, I came to Livingston and that didn't work out. But it was just, I think largely because I was deep rooted and grew up as a paramedic in a very different, like you said, very unique, very fast paced, you know, very intense system. And so that was difficult. It was I had to see. I don't regret. I'll never regret going down there to check it out, but I had to see, and it just wasn't.
I wish you would have stuck around a little longer. You would have loved it. They've got their stuff together down there. They have so let's compare systems, right? Let's compare Genesee County to Livingston County. So Livingston County EMS is a single provider for one county. So imagine Genesee County only had one ambulance service. That's what's happening if you live in Livingston County. You only have one ambulance company. And they have one small hospital in Howell. They have one small hospital in Brighton. Their large hospitals that they take their critical patients to are University of Michigan and St. Joe Ann Arbor, and then Sparrow if they go to Lansing, and then north to Genesis. And they've got Providence Novi. So they've got to go out to get to their large facilities. So they do have to take care of very sick patients for a long time. They have a medical director who's the one singular medical director who's been in that role for years, whereas Genesee County, and not to a fault, I like how Genesee County does it, it's just different. Genesee County has a revolving medical director. We get a new medical director every year, and it's a representative from one of the 3 hospitals. And again, not a bad thing, it's just different. Well, Livingston has the one medical director who's been overseeing their agency for years and years and years. So that, and he's very progressive in what he expects of their crews. And they're a good agency. So that's a difference in counties. And so it's just one county south of us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you go across a boundary line and you're getting different service in comparison to what you would get in Genesee County.
Right.
Yeah.
That's stuff you just don't think about. You just don't. Yeah. I've never moved and thought, I wonder what the ambulatory services are here in my new town. Like, I've never thought about that before. Like, I know that my property tax is affected by how far away I am from a fire department, but other than that, it's
right.
For sure.
It's interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Because like Pastor Carl, Chris, one of our associate pastors, they're looking to move, so they're looking north and like Gaines and Swartz Creek and Grand Blanc and stuff. So that was the information I hit him with first. I'm like, oh, if you're out in those areas, you have what's called Metro Police, and it's a conglomeration of 3 agencies that became one. And like, this is who your responders would be, and you're kind of far out there, so it would take a little bit longer to get this kind of care. The fire department still responds and stuff, but if you move into Grand Blanc, then there's always rigs around because it's kind of like a hub, because Genesis is here, so there's always rigs passing through, and just, well, it's just funny you mentioned that, because that's like the first,
That's what he's dealing with right now.
I'm pretty simple-minded, I guess. I'm just focused on the one skill set.
No, I mean, you're dealing with what you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I had worked at Livingston County as a supervisor, and I lured Jim away for a brief second. We hired him down at Livingston, and he's like, I like Genesee County. I'm going back. And so he didn't last that long.
It could be said I didn't really give it a fair shake.
Well, how long were you down in, how long? Like, what, 2 weeks or something?
No, it was like that.
It was maybe a month, maybe 2 months.
Maybe.
If we're being generous, maybe 2 months.
Okay. Yeah.
Just kind of was
That's
what
all
it
right.
was, man.
That's all right. You know you well, and you know what you love to do well. So that's when you know where you're supposed to be.
I really love that city, man. It's so buck wild, but it's just like we had.
Which is funny because for not growing up in Michigan,
yeah.
Well, I mean, not for being out of state and moving around, for you to just have such a heart for the city and the county that you're in. I mean, that's pretty special, you know.
Yeah, it's just like Chris nailed it. It's just so unique and how we do things. But yeah, super cool. Yeah. What is going on in education? You could fill us in on.
There's actually something huge going on in education. There's a representative house representative out of Macomb County who has introduced a bill to the House floor that is attempting to implement a state test. So not to get rid of National Registry, but to make a second exam available. And so the backstory is that, and you're living this, Jim, the staffing crisis is very real. It's happening.
Yeah.
And I listened to the representative talk, and he says, we've been talking about the crisis for years. He says it's time to take action, and nobody's doing anything. Okay. He's like, this is my stab at it. And so he's introduced it in a bill format, and he says, let's let the state write the exam that allows a paramedic to become licensed. Currently, we have to take a national examination called the National Registry, and he doesn't want to do away with that, but he wants to let the state write an exam.
So why would he not?
Great question.
Yeah.
So
what would be the changes? What would be the Michigan version, and why?
Sure. So the behind the scenes, in order to take the National Registry examination, you have to graduate from an accredited paramedic program. We have to go through national accreditation.
Okay.
So we have to meet a lot of standards to be able to operate as a paramedic program. And if you don't test with National Registry, then you don't have to come from an accredited school. So if you want to open up Ashley's paramedic program and just do the state exam, you wouldn't have to go through any accreditation process whatsoever.
Okay.
So this would give the opportunity for everybody in the state, every agency, every fire department, anybody who wants to open up a paramedic program to essentially be able to do it with fewer standards.
Is that good? What's your opinion, Chris? What do you think?
Well, I'll pause there. I have a very deep-seated opinion on this, and so I'll wait a second
now. Ooh, yeah. Ooh. Why are you gonna wait a second? Just to let us think about it for a second?
Well, I was gonna see if Jim has anything to say.
Oh, okay.
I do.
Yes.
So I understand full well, like you said, I'm living this crisis, but that in no way, shape, or form means that you take the standard and put it in the basement just to pump out people to have more staff.
Sure.
That, like, I don't see how that could possibly be good.
I agree with you. It's, in my opinion, I think it's a horrible idea. So the standard, everybody will beat the drum and say, no, we're not going to lower any standards. You know, that the rules will still be the same. You're just not answering to the national accreditor. We'll still have to do the same things. I don't see how that'll happen.
No,
I don't. The process to get accredited is rigorous. It's thorough. my job exists in order to maintain accreditation for our program. Like I am a full-time employee and I do accreditation work every day.
Okay.
So the hoops I have to jump through, the things I have to prove that we are doing to maintain this accreditation it's an everyday process. So to tell me that a program that doesn't have to go through accreditation will have to meet the same standards, I just don't believe it. I don't think that they will have to. So that's part A. And so you're going to have, like Jim just said, a substandard education program. You might have a rock star educator and you might produce rock star paramedics going through this, but the programs will not have to meet the same standards. So
then inevitably over time they'll decline. It could start strong. It really probably would.
Well, and let's take let's say Grand Blanc Fire wants to start their own program. They've got a great community base. They probably have some good funding available, and they'll probably be able to hire somebody who's great at doing, training people, and they might be great. And then you go up to Ubley, Michigan, the smallest town in the smallest city in the state, with 400 residents, and maybe Ubley Fire wants to start a paramedic program. They're allowed to, they're able to, and they don't have nearly as much money, and they're not going to be able to dedicate full-time staff. And it's going to be 2 people in the basement of the fire department learning paramedic stuff from the old crotchety fire chief or whoever it is,
Right.
It just doesn't, there's no credibility in doing it this way. And then the scarier part is that there's no accountability, and then there's no transparency.
Right.
I have to be 100% transparent in everything I do. I have to report everything that I do. And if we don't have transparency, then how do you know you're going to a good program?
Right.
So that's that part of it.
But what that brings, though, the fact that you have to go through all that, and you have the team that you have. So we were getting ready to clear. Well, we're at our station 92 up. It's in Mount Morris. It's like Saginaw, Clovis, that kind of area up by 475. And this kid, looks like he's just getting ready to graduate high school. Probably even might be one of my wife's kids. And he comes up and he asks if we're taking applications. And one of our EMTs, like, or you can go on the website, and he goes, "Hold on there, Hoss." He goes, "You look like you're about 18. He goes, do you have an EMT license?" And the kid says, "Well, how do I go about getting that?" And the EMT says, "Well, I'll give you the website, you link on, you log on, and there's programs in Saginaw." He said, "Or you could go get a solid base EMT education down at Genesee." And he said, and then you start there, and then you can build from there. She's like, "I didn't take the Saginaw MMR program," he said, "so I can't speak to the levels." He goes, "But I did take the Genesee program, so I understand like the quality of education you'd be getting." Sure. And so they got this kid. I don't know what if he'll follow through. He looked fresh-faced and eager.
We've worked very hard to build that reputation, and we've we're consistent in what we do, and that's the kind of marketing we get from our graduates and even non-graduates. We hear that story a lot. Somebody to come to your program, and like I said, I think we're doing good work. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's cool. Where I went. Ashley, yeah. I went through Genesee for EMT, and then I went through Genesee for medic. I went through the old FOH when they were EMT class was in those trailers where the bank is now.
Before we put the house bill to bed, I want to say a couple more things.
Oh, hit it.
Go for it, Chris.
Well, here's my bigger concern, right? My bigger concern is the idea of the state exam. The National Registry exam is a process to write a test to the magnitude that they do is unmatched. You can't do it, and the state's not going to be able to write an exam that rivals theirs, rivals registries. So again, we go back to standards, and standardization. You're going to have paramedic A who graduates from a national registry program and passes that exam at really high standard. And then you're going to have a state paramedic who's going to pass the state exam. And we can't say, there's no possible way that we can say that those two standards are the same.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that either of the paramedics are better than the other. That is not what that's testifying to. What it is saying, though, is that there are now two standards that we are allowed to meet, and one will be easier than the other. And so that really muddies the water, right?
Yeah.
When you go out for a basketball team, you know, the professional basketball players, you don't lower the standard just because the team needs 4 more players, right? You still have a professional team that you got to put on the court, and you still have to meet certain standards to make the team. And I kind of think of it that way. And it doesn't mean that the person who doesn't make the team isn't a good basketball player. It just means that they didn't meet the criteria to make the team. And so I just I'm struggling with this because it's gained a lot of support. The state's EMS office has an advisory board of communities of interest that give them advice, essentially. And that meeting, they meet once a month. That meeting was last Friday. And this House bill went up for discussion, and then they vote on whether or not the board or this committee is going to support it. And it passed 10-8. So there were 10 communities, 10 organizations that were represented that voted yes, and 8 that voted no. And where I struggle is that the Michigan Association of Ambulance Services voted for it. The Michigan Association of EMTs voted for it. The Rural Health voted for it. And the fire chiefs and fire union voted for it. And so these are these organizations that are and then here's the one that I really struggle with, is that the Society of EMS Instructors voted for it. You know, this is my group, right? This is the instructor group. And as an organization, they're saying, no, we think this is a good idea. And then the people that opposed it, the hospitals opposed it, the medical control authorities opposed it, and the College of Emergency Physicians opposed it. Those are the 3 big ones that come to mind. And the pharmacist opposed it, Flight opposed it. You know, so you've got all these well-educated, strong organizations that are saying no, it's a bad idea. So it gained traction. It got introduced as a House bill. It has to go to a committee first, which it did last Wednesday or Thursday. It went to committee, and then it will either come out of committee and go onto the House floor for a vote, or the committee will kill it. But I think they're going to put it out to the floor for a vote. So that may be a big change of what we're going to see happen in EMS in Michigan, is the introduction of a state test. And then last thing I'll say, and then I'll put this to bed, is that in the bill, it even says you've got state of Michigan, you have 2 years to write the test. Take 2 years to write it, and then we'll implement it. And I got up and spoke at the meeting last Friday at the EMSCC meeting, and I said 2 years. I said, we're 2 years to write the test, and then we're gonna let programs operate that are non-accredited, and so they've got at least a year to run a paramedic program. So we're not going to see results from this for about 3 years. But the staffing crisis is happening today. So we go to your point, Jim. It's like, this is not a solution for today's problem. And so I don't know. I'm really struggling with the fact that this bill was even introduced, and it received support from some pretty smart people.
Right. It seems like the people that shouldn't have supported it are the ones that did.
Well,
Sure.
Chris, do you think it's part of our culture as like so I'm a 52-year-old paramedic, and so do you think it's guys in my age group that are like, I don't care, I'm done soon anyway, it makes no difference to me, I already have my license, you know?
No, I don't think that it's that. I don't think that this is a group of people that don't care. It is, however, the group of people that experienced the time when we voted in National Registry. So the people around that table have been around for a long time. And when registry became a thing, that I was around when that happened. And in fact, I was teaching at the time. And no, I was teaching at the time. And so I remember when all that argument happened, and there was a lot of opposition to it being implemented. And And so I think that's the group of people that are still sitting at the table, are the people that opposed it in the first place. And so they're playing the "I told you so" card, and they're blaming the staffing crisis on the fact that there's not access to education. They're saying, well, not everybody can run a program because they have to be accredited. And it's just like, well, not everybody should be running a program.
Yeah.
Well, there's plenty of programs in the state, right?
We reduced programs. So there was 45 or so before accreditation was required, and we dropped down to 25. So we cut it dramatically. The 25 moved up to 27, I think is where we're at. And out of the 27 that are operational, we have 52 campuses around the state. So we've got satellite campuses and consortium agreements, and we have 57 campuses around the state.
Yeah.
So really, there's no shortage of opportunities for education.
I don't buy that argument.
No.
Well, and this is so, but the staffing issue is not just for medics.
Correct. Yeah. Interesting you bring that up, Ashley, because the EMT programs do not have to be accredited. And
right.
there are 52 EMT programs in the state. And yet we still have an EMT shortage.
Right.
So what would you implement, Chris?
We can have satellite locations operational within anywhere between 30 and 90 days. If an agency wanted to run a program at their facility, call a local place, call whoever's running these programs and say, can you come and do this at our place? And I'll bet we'll be able to turn a lot of campuses on really quick. And we were talking about Livingston County a little bit ago. We did that at Livingston County. There's down the US 23 corridor, there's a huge gap. There's no programs between us and Ann Arbor. So it's Genesee, and then it's down in Ann Arbor at HVA, the Huron Valley Ambulance. So there's this huge gap in Livingston County. And we opened up a program there. It's operational. We've got 15 students currently going through programs there, and we're running a satellite, and it was pretty easy to do. And I don't have to be the only one to open satellites, but let's get these other schools on board and let's run satellites. Let's form consortiums. You can do what's called a consortium agreement, where, I guess let me backtrack. The satellite location, I'm in charge of what happens there. Okay. If you form a consortium, you can put the agency that wants to run the program in charge. They can run their entire show. And that seems to be one of the problems they have, is they don't like the fact that my program is slow. It's going to take you about 16 months to get your paramedic license, which is not very long, right? Put in perspective of what we're asking these paramedics to do in the most critical scenario.
Took me a lot longer to do debits and credits.
Yeah. And so the problem is the agencies want people on the trucks faster. Yeah. We need bodies today. So they want shorter programs. It takes time,
though, still to do emergency services.
I think so.
I mean, I could, generally speaking, I could teach somebody to do my job in the 2 weeks to a month.
Sure.
All the basic stuff, but I'm not responding for somebody's life.
And
that's a whole different train the brain to respond with stress, all the things like that. Should take a little bit of time, I think.
On the facts of the matter on this, but I've been told, I don't know if it's just the state of Michigan, but that paramedics and EMTs, like EMS, is not considered a profession.
We're grouped into what's called allied health.
Right.
And so we're not considered medical professionals at the same standard that an RN would be, or physicians, or we're right on line with respiratory technicians. Let me go out to the website and see what else we're on.
Or
that's the group we're in.
What about medical assistants?
Yeah, medical assistants are in there. But yeah, allied health. But that's the other struggle. It's like, well, if we come to the table and argue that we are medical professionals and we're disjointed, right? If we come to it and say, well, yeah, we're medical professionals, but we have two sets of standards. That's
Right.
not what medical professionals do.
Correct.
No.
You know, everybody's on board with it and they follow the same rules.
And see, that's always been my biggest struggle, is because I feel like in the EMS culture, we're kind of holding ourselves back. I mean, not even kind of. We're actually holding ourselves back because it's just widely accepted that we just kind of are who we are. We do what we do, you know.
Now, being through the national registry, though, could you take your medic license anywhere else in the United States?
You're hitting on all. It's so funny, Ashley. You're asking all the right questions, right?
Way to
So,
go.
Because
Out
I
of-
just had an RN friend say she'd get all jammed up trying to, because
Yeah.
Michigan isn't grouped in with a certain
Yeah.
whatever, however that works with
So
licensing.
there, out of the 50 states, 46 require national registry. So there's
Okay.
46 of us that all follow the same rules. There are 2 states, and it's Montana, maybe, and somebody else, that make it optional. And then New York has been historically against registry since its inception. New York has always done its own thing.
Okay.
That's it. There's 3 states that say no, we don't think registry is the thing. All of the registry states, if you have your national registry, you can go to that state, and you might have to jump through a few hoops to get the state license, but you can get the state license.
Okay.
Now, if we implement the state exam in Michigan and you are a brand new person going through paramedic school and you graduate with only a state license and no national registry, you cannot go to any other states unless you take an entire paramedic program over again.
Okay.
That's national. That's an accredited program.
Okay.
So it reduces mobility for employees if this bill passes. And there was a good argument. It's like 80% of the providers in Michigan let their national registry lapse. 80%. That's a huge number. But to get your registry back, it takes 66 continuing education credits, and then you have to take the test. And that's it. So like someone like me, I was nationally registered in 2001, I think was when I had my registry, and I let it lapse because I don't need it. I plan to leave Michigan. But if I want to get it back because I get a job opportunity in Ohio,
Right.
then all I have to do is 66 credit hours, continuing education credits, take the examination, and I get my registry card. And now I'm mobile. Versus that state graduate who will then have to say, well, I want to go to Ohio for the same job opportunity. Oh, wait, I've got to do everything.
Yeah.
At minimum 1,100 hours of a paramedic program, plus an internship, plus all my clinical hours, and pay a second paramedic tuition.
Mhm.
I've just paid for that paramedic tuition because I just passed that class. Oh, but now I got to take an entire class over again to get registry.
So you better do your homework, and you better
You know,
make a very
and-
conscious decision before you.
I only let mine lapse after the last, not the cycle I'm in now,
Sure.
but once I hit, like 40, whatever it was, the last, not the current license, but the one before, I was like, I'm never going to go anywhere. But before that, there was always that little twinkle in my eye for Cali, going back to Cali, and there is some hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
There, because years ago, we went to my older brother's wedding. We went to Santa Cruz,
Mhm.
and we loved it. And for a hot minute there, was like, I could work at a California Sam's, check into being a California medic. And so I contacted fire departments, and they put me online with their situation with Cal Fires to work with AMR, and kind of there's some stuff incorporated together. And I talked to a training officer, and I said, I have my national registry, and she said, that's awesome. We would need you to come in through Cal Fire to take this program and to do these things, and then to take our test. It wasn't like a state test for Cal Fire specifically.
Okay.
And at that point, I was like, oh, no.
They didn't say take an entire paramedic program over
No,
again.
no. They said, basically come here, be indoctrinated, and we'll have some things that you need to do.
Yeah.
So that's
But-
it, and tell tell the 17-year-old high school graduate who wants to go into EMS or fire to think about that. Before you enroll in your paramedic program, think about this accreditation thing. That 17-year-old kid, they're not going to think about that. People who enroll in EMS programs, they've got a couple things. Is the price point okay?
Yeah.
And is it on the days that I don't work? And that's it. That's it. So if your local fire department just down the road can give you a program for free because it's funded through tax dollars, and it's right down the road and it's on a day you can get to class, you're going to take it and you're not going to ask any questions when you're 17, 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
And see, honestly, when people come to me, typically because I did fire first, I try to their entry point to be on that track. Sure. Go with a fire department, see you've even like helping people or responding to stuff because you're not paying anything.
Yeah.
Work your way in. My chief paid for both licenses.
Okay.
Because he had dreams and aspirations of Grand Blanc Fire running ALS units and all these other things. And I was the only one interested. So he opened the door to kind of the EMS kingdom, and the rest was him, I was like the guinea pig. But that was my angle. I wanted to do something because I'd been away from the military. I needed to serve in some kind of capacity. And just so a lot of the time I encourage young people, go join your local paid on call department.
Okay.
Build up some capital, work in some whatever job. You're just getting paid to run calls to see if you even like it. Come on a ride along or 3.
Yeah.
And make sure you even desire to do it. And then by all means, your best option will be the National Registry option.
Yeah. I want to ask a question. The blame is on education, saying it's not accessible. That's why the shortage is happening. The other side of the coin is that retention isn't happening. Right. And there was a national study that was put out last year. Agencies and fire departments around the country have a 25% annual turnover. So they're losing a quarter of their staff every year that they have to try and replace. 25%. And so the hole in the bucket is bigger than we can continue to fill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you look at the National Registry numbers, we've had a gradual increase of between 3 and 5% every year of National Registry certifications being issued. So we've got a pretty standard clip of what we're doing, but then the hole in the bucket is so big and we're losing people so fast. That's, in my opinion, why the crisis is happening.
Yes.
So we really got to figure out how to plug that hole. So I wanted to have a question I want to ask you. So you guys both have kids, young kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
if your kids came to you and said they wanted to do EMS as a career, what would you say?
Absolutely.
To do it?
Because I have an 11-year-old son that wants to go in the military, then wants to be a paramedic and a fireman.
That's awesome, Jim.
Absolutely. I'm the kid though that this was my dream at his age. I was going to be a fireman and a paramedic, and the Army was just a side gig. I think we're at the spot we are is because the elephant that's always in the room, countrywide, in everything is mental health. Mm-hmm. We don't train for emotional and mental fitness. We do that like on the fire department. We say we'll go pull hose all day. We'll drill. And all that muscle guys,
mm-hmm.
we'll tell all the cool old stories, but we're not actively, and even, doesn't necessarily need to be part of the curriculum in the education piece, but that's never talked about. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the only industries that you can be burnt out. Like I used to be that old guy that was like, there's no way that you're this jaded this quick, but no, it's possible. And coming through COVID ruined some lives because these kids didn't have the capacity to deal with what they were seeing.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that the mental health piece, especially when you have a crisis, when you have an agency that is like hemorrhaging staff,
they have the same number of calls they need to get done. There's just absolutely no time to check up on your people.
So that brings me to a thought about the high turnover. So being in a hospital system, we have a pretty robust human resources department and process. And it's something very simple. It's to do like a 30, 60, 90-day check-in. Very common in every business around the globe, right? Your new hire orientation, your onboarding, check in at 30 days, check in at 60 days, check in at 90 days. How are you? Are we meeting what we told you we were going to be doing as a company? And here's what you're doing. Here's your feedback about your progress. And that has been proven to increase retention. Again, in other industries, I don't think it's ever been studied in EMS, but in healthcare, it's been studied at hospitals, and that's implemented. It's what we're intended to do. And so let me ask you, Jim, did that ever happen? Did you ever get anybody at 30, 60, 90 check in on you, talk about for a second what your annual review was at sports? Right. Did you ever get sat down and said, here's what you're doing, here's some goals we hope you achieve? No. And did anybody give you a measurement?
Nope.
Yeah. My annual review was I sat down with Harry and he slid $100 across for my Christmas bonus, and that was my annual review. He slid it across the table, and that was my annual review.
Mm-hmm. Nobody and then they started doing reviews, and they would regurgitate the same one year after year after year, because we forgot we needed to do this for our CAS accreditation.
Yeah.
So we need to pump this through to be so we dotted the I's and crossed the T's.
So I want to answer your question though too, Chris.
Yeah.
So our teenager hasn't brought it up in a few months, so there's a couple different layers to this. One, I want all my kids to do what they were knit together to do. Mm-hmm. I'm a person of faith. I believe that God has a plan for us. I believe he's going to weave all the things together. Yeah. And so I'm very careful, because I was kind of brought up, you go get your college education, you go get a good paying job, you make that time worth the money that you're going to go and make and stuff. And so there was a bit of pressure to go get a good job. But my mom was an RN. My dad sold real estate, and they did pretty well for themselves. Both grandparents opened up businesses of their own. They were entrepreneurs. They did stuff. So it was pretty cool. But so my oldest so far has expressed interest in going into law enforcement. And so aside from the stress piece of the job, we've also had conversations about, well, you better have your financial stuff together, because you're not going to be rolling in the money doing that. And so this is the other thing we talk about, teachers about, oh, you better love the job, because people really love it to do it, and I don't think that we should put a whole industry through the grinder just because, well, you should really be called to it. You should be kind of compensated well for what you do for our communities too. So, I think that could be a lot better for the risk reward type thing. I feel like I could do a lot safer stuff flying from my desk, making a lot more money per hour than basic EMT.
I've asked about, I don't know, maybe 40 or 45 people or so that question. And predominantly, and these are all EMS providers that range anywhere from 1 year on the road as a paramedic all the way up to 8 and 10 years on the road, and a couple actually longer than that. And predominantly the answer is no. Yep. I would not encourage my kids to get into this profession. And so if you want to talk about that, I mean, when the people in the profession aren't even advertising the profession, why aren't people getting into the profession?
Right.
There's no kid sitting in fourth grade, well, with the exception of maybe Jim's kid, there's no kid sitting in fourth grade aspiring to do this.
Right.
There's Jim and mine stories. We happened on this by accident. Mm-hmm. I'm the same thing. I never intended to go into EMS. It was a job that I needed to do so that my wife could go to school and I would be home more often.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
That's it. And Jim, needed something after the military, so we fell on it by accident. And there's So we can't rely on that to be the recruitment method to get
Right.
people into EMS.
Right.
But we also need this large percentage of people that say, no, I would never let my kid do this, to really love the job, so that they do tell every kid that they come in contact with, no, this job's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's just not out there.
Right. And that's always been the case. And it's been wild to me because, I mean, obviously you go through seasons, you know, where it's just not okay. You just barely hanging on. But largely, this is literally the coolest thing that you could ever do and get paid for.
Heck yeah.
I mean, Ashley, we've talked about this. They put us in a truck with a couple $100,000 of equipment and just say, all right.
Essentially unsupervised.
Essentially
unsupervised. And you're going to, I don't know how it is now, but you're going to have hours of downtime to do nothing. And we're going to pay you for that. And then you're going to get interrupted for a while and you get to go be nice to some people.
Right.
It's not a.
You're going to run them to the hospital, see your buddies, say hello. Yeah. It's just the best.
Yeah.
It really is.
I really hope my kids at least go on some ride-alongs, you know, at least see what other members of the community are doing to serve the rest of us. You know, I think it's phenomenal. I have had no understanding except for the couple times I've used emergency medical services myself, you know, or my mom coming home with maybe just a few stories from working in the ICU. But other than that, like, I hope that my kids at least go and see, to at least have an appreciation. If not, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm blessed to have this experience knowing friends that are in EMS, you know, which is tremendous, you know, but otherwise I wouldn't really know. I'd be doing my little lane of commuting to work and doing my 9 to 5 and coming home and not really thinking about it a whole lot, you know.
It's cool to see too, all the side stories, man. And obviously I've been at it a while, so I have like 18 years of stories. But like, what's cool is when you have like Austin Blythe. He goes to church with us, Chris. I don't know if he went through Genesis's EMT program. I'm pretty sure he did. Mm-hmm. But he learned doing clinicals and doing ride-alongs at the public health crisis in Flint, and he's been down here living in Fenton and Linden his whole life, just 20 minutes or so away, not knowing it was a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and he was on that track of, I'm going to do college and I'm going to do my pre-med and go to medical school and be a surgeon and do all the things. And then it was like, he comes to me, he's like, how do I make some side cash while I do medical school? And I said, well, actually, that's like what you need to do is get actual patient clinical hours, patient contact hours. And so a lot of docs will do EMT while they're doing school.
Sure.
And what happens is he gets on that rig and he gets the bug, he gets bit, and now he's just in this whole new big world that he didn't know existed.
So funny, because now every time I run into him, he's like, oh, you'll appreciate this. And he'll go blah, 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 and tell me another story that's just he's so excited.
It's just, that's the piece, though. That's the thing, Chris, is like, if we want to bring back the culture, how it was when we were first coming up, is you got to figure out a way to get people to love it so much that they would want all their friends to do it, and their kids and everybody.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer. It's a cultural shift. The divisions in age groups are very true. Millennials absolutely exist, and all of the words that people use to describe millennials is very true, and it is just not a group that is out. I don't want to say out to help people, because they're helpers, but they're more prone to do it from behind a desk. And they've been, the millennials, they've been helicoptered. That's where the term helicopter parent came in. I'm in school right now. I came across a term called the Black Hawk parent. And so we've got the helicopter parent where we hover and make sure everything's safe for our kid. But then the Black Hawk parent hovers to make sure that they're safe, but then we'll fight to make sure that it gets right for our kids, even if it doesn't have it. We will fight for everything so that our kid gets the last popsicle or our kid gets the whatever. And those are the Blackhawk parents. And that's how these 18-year-olds up to age 35, I think is, maybe that's a little too high. I don't know where it splits off, but the millennials, that's how they were raised. And so it's a very different age group, and they're not prone to do the hard work that not that they're not hard workers, but they're not out there to do it the way we do it.
Right.
The positive side about millennials is that they find shortcuts for everything, and they find a way to make it easier for themselves. And so I think that's the other thing we're dealing with, is that they can make as much money as you and I make by doing affiliate marketing on Instagram at age 19. And they can go out and work 9 jobs,
Right.
working hours that they want to work, and still make the same amount of money. And it's just a different culture. And until we switch to that somehow, we're going to struggle to get people in this industry.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have all the answers tonight.
No.
I just have to smile because I'm like, oop, yep, I can relate. Yep, I can relate to that too.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's there's different within culture, different subcultures, right?
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time with the veteran community and a lot of time with the first responder community. So outside of that, it's hard for me to really reconcile all the things going on, because it's a very small shot group that I operate.
Yeah.
But I want everybody to come in, I want people to see it. I want people to understand the mindset. So why we started this whole thing to begin with.
Yeah.
It's a life-changing experience, even if you do it for a minute.
Right.
It is so life-changing. If you have the opportunity to run a CPR call, it immediately changes your life. If you realize it or not, nobody will ever be able to take the fact away that you tried to save somebody's life, whether you're successful or not.
Right.
I was in such a position that I was able to try to make it that. I mean, that's the biggest thing we can ask of another human, right? Is to try and save another life. And nobody can ever take that away from you. You'll always have that, even if you only do it one time. Right? That was like one of the most profound things for me. It's like, oh wow, right? I'm part of something big here. I'm trying to do better and make these other lives better. And the minute you get that mindset shifted, and you realize that you're not there just to get your paycheck, but you're like, wow, I've been put here in this profession to make other people's lives better. It changes you.
Right. So many layers, even the times when you're just there to bear witness, you know what I mean? But it is a big deal. I had some young medics ask me, they were talking to me about veteran stuff, and they were talking to me about what it's like to go to a different country. And there's another, a dude that works at MedStar, but he was on a couple deployments, and both of us, when they asked us, we were standing together. Now this is post early COVID. Okay. And I said, you guys made it through COVID. That's what deployment's like what we did, how every day felt like Monday, and all the different things. And it was all this, despite the fact that all the other calls were still happening, all the heart attacks and the strokes and all that, but we were so hyper focused on this pandemic, that was, and I think right now what we're seeing, what we're going through, I will really hold on to the fact that I think that really destroyed a lot of people.
Oh, for sure.
I think it's going to take, they asked me at a staff meeting at church one time, like what that looks like. And my answer was, it's going to take years to recover from that.
But I think you calling people in, Jim, inviting people in, I 1000% believe, like, that is such a passion of mine, for people to take the time and see, and not just try to understand, but go see what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes and place, and spend that time with them. That's where we can get out of, like, even just the time of the pandemic, where it's so easy to just kind of retreat and just only really care about yourself, to force yourself back out to see and know somebody else is huge, and we have to work so hard to do that. And so the more that you keep inviting people in, even if they're not gonna, even if it's just one ride along, because I know you've done that a lot with just young folks that are not even not even gonna come in. Yeah, they're not gonna do it, but for them to see that,
right,
that changes everything. That kind of stuff changes everything. It's so important for us to do that.
Right. Well, that's the grind, really, is to get people interested again. You know.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer, and it's tough. And I wouldn't want to be in the shoes of the people running the ambulance companies right now. I wouldn't, because I just don't know the answers. So.
Yeah, I was just talking to my boss today, and just the fuel price caveat that you don't really think of, but for every 25 cents spent, it represents like $100,000 a year each truck. You know what I mean? And it's
it impacts everything. I mean, any discretionary income, going and having dinner with folks.
Trucks are hard to come by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that they don't have it's definitely an agency with the funds, but to find a physical truck to purchase, to put on the road,
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's all just, there's so many layers to what's happening. There's not just one single thing to say, well, this crisis is because of A and only A. It's not. There's just
it never is that
levels.
way. And I think for us to be more dynamic than that, for us to really see that there's so many things that impact, I think that's wise of us to not pigeonhole ourselves into two different camps and stuff. So that's good.
Well, that's all I got.
That's awesome. Well, I love these types of conversations. And Chris, you bring such a depth of knowledge and experience and wisdom in what you see in the industry and stuff. So this is really fun too, because I get to hear more of the nuts and bolts of things, and that's really, really cool. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You got to have people around to do that, because I sure don't think of that stuff. I just I'm in the space, but I do think about shifting the culture, and it's cool to have young people already. I'm coming into this new place, and people know me, they've seen me, they know that I spent a long time in this area doing this job. So to instantly be their Moses, I mean, you can tell us all the things, Grand Wizard, not Grand Wizard. Edit that.
Edit that quick.
I'm not.
I don't know how much editing you do, but the some pictures that popped up the other day, Jim, was the camping trips that you and Carrie came on, and you made your wizard staff.
That's so dumb and shameful. No, it was funny.
I'll leave you to tell that story, but that picture popped up, and it was quite humorous to remember that.
Wild times. So sure.
Well, good. Well, tonight's Bryn turns 21 tonight at midnight.
Oh boy.
So even though we have to work tomorrow, we're going to go to the bar, and we're going to make sure we buy her first drink because she's going to go up to Mount Pleasant tomorrow to celebrate with her friends. But that's on our agenda for tonight. So
right,
I might try to catch a nap here in the next half hour. So then
there you go. That's cool.
She's 21.
Yeah. 21, and then so I've got 21. Camden will be 17 in July, and then Gianna will be 15 in June.
Yeah, same with Avery.
That's where we're starting. Yeah, that's where Parkins and Chandler's are starting right now. Our oldest are 15.
Yeah, she'll be getting ready to do driver's training this summer.
So Gianna just did hers.
Yeah.
Because you can, 14 and a half, you can get them in there. So
Kalina finished segment 1. She's going to do segment 2 this fall. So.
Yeah, so we've got that. And I've got a 21-year-old in a couple hours, which is the weirdest thing to say. It's pretty weird. So. Hopefully, let's redo this when your oldest hits 21, and let's have that conversation.
Let's do it.
I like it.
Dude, the fact that Zoe turns 21 on St. Patrick's Day, like from the second she was born, like seconds after she was delivered, I'm holding this baby and going, oh my God, she's going to turn 21 on St. Patrick's. And the doc is like, what? I'm like, you're getting ahead of yourself. I'm like, no, I don't think I am.
Wow. And she's fun.
She is.
It explains so much.
So anyway, well,
yeah, this has been great.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back anytime. I enjoy doing this.
Right on.
And yeah, so anytime.
All right, I'm gonna close this out with my outro. Well, thank you to our listeners. Thank you, Freedom Center Church and Kingdom Builders, for your support. Thanks again, Chris Patrello, for jumping on with us tonight. This is a good conversation. This will go up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get that posted out there.
Well, good. I appreciate that. And Ashley, again, good meeting you officially for the first time.
You too. Yeah.
And thanks for the invite.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right.
See ya.
Take care, guys.